All right, y'all. We had technical difficulties. Hopefully, you found your way here from my aborted earlier stream. If somebody could in the chat just let me know that you can hear my voice and see my hand on the screen, uh, as well as the captions, that'd be nice to let me know you can see those as well. I'm going to wait just a little bit um, just to make sure people can get in here. Let's see if I can. It's bigger. Oh, good. Maximus can see everything. Can you hear everything, Maximus? Now we're getting some viewers. You guys can be my tech support and make sure that everything's going okay. Oh, good. We've got audio and video. All right. And you should be seeing me down in the bottom corner, and you should see up here a sphere, and out in the main spot, my drawing surface. Confirm that for me if you could. Okay, cool. Avitha's got me. It's all set up. Let's see if I can make the chat bigger. That hides my stream though. Go back to it here. These captions are going to be wonky, I'm sure. If I speak loudly and clearly, it works better. All right, and I'm going to wait till probably 10 o'clock or 10 after, just to make sure, people have the chance to get in here and see. Just to give you folks that are here a picture of what we're going to be doing. I'm just going to be keeping my eye on the chat. Okay, good. They're pretty good. I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat. If you have any questions, just let me know in the chat, and I'll speak to it as we go. Otherwise, I'm just going to be drawing along, and you can, if you have your drawing set up, if it's convenient for you, if you have your drawing set up there, you can just follow along with me. I'm going to be working from the reference that I gave you, so we should sort of be on the same page there. Avelia is asking if you're supposed to draw with me. You don't have to. It's going to be a pretty boring stream if you're not, I imagine, because it's literally watching someone draw and ramble for like an hour. So, but if you have questions, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be specific to the drawing necessarily that I'm doing. If you have questions about whatever, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll speak to those to the extent I can as well. And then I'm going to be, I guess, describing my thought process as I'm doing the drawing, stuff to watch out for. You can kind of see how careful I'm being and so on. But no, you don't have to draw with me, especially if you've got your phone and not an ideal place to work or something. I don't know what everyone's situations are like. So, yeah, you can just watch this, and you can watch it later. I'm going to put it up on the channel so that you can rewatch it if you like, and then we'll kick off. We'll next week. Oh, just a reminder, you folks in beginning, anybody who's here in the beginning class, next week the schedule switches. So we're going to be, beginning class is going to be 10 a.m., but on Monday and Tuesday, that's going to be the live streams for beginning. If you are in intermediate, which there shouldn't be anyone here because I didn't send them the link, but if you are, if you're subscribing and you're in intermediate, Those are going to be Wednesday, Thursday streams, also at 10 a.m. And then also right after this at 11:30, I'm going to have an open Zoom session. I'll send out the link. It's probably going to be slightly after 11:30, but I'll send out the link in an announcement. So hopefully you're keeping your eye on the announcements. That's kind of going to be the way I communicate with you. I'm going to send that out after. And then we can have an open Zoom session. You can ask me questions. You can type privately in the chat to me. It'll be more like a back and forth interaction. All right, so it's 10 after. I'm going to get started on this. I have a sphere up. This isn't the drawing you're necessarily going to be doing, but it's going to be the explanation area of kind of sort of a quickish version of how this drawing can come together. And then I'll pull the actual reference up that we're using and draw from that for a while. So the first thing I want to do with this sphere is just establish where is my light and where is my shadow. And with a sphere, it's relatively simple. I have this round shape and I can see that shadow edge nice and clear, kind of arcing along. So what I'm going to be doing in the drawing with the full figure is I'm going to be drawing the light shapes only. So I'm not going to draw a circle and draw the tabletop and sort of draw it like I normally would. I'm just going to start with the light shapes. And so for me, and I'll just kick off here, for me, let's see this. If this were a figure, I would be measuring these shapes out a lot more carefully, but it's kind of an arc like this of light. And then it doesn't go full circle for me, for everyone. It doesn't go full circle. There's a shadow edge like right through there. And I'm drawing really lightly. This is just barely the weight of the pencil on the page is just about all I'm doing here. So there's one shape of light. All right, now what other shapes of light do I have? Well, there's a background area here that's got a shape of light. Does the gummy eraser work on white charcoal? It does. Be careful. And if you're, there may be a few people who are using like a colored pencil or something. If you don't have the charcoal, if you're using a Prismacolor colored pencil or something, this won't save you. And I would use this very sparingly, and I'll probably use it a little bit just to show you, but it will make a mess of your black paper if you're not careful. It'll kind of gum it up and have it looking kind of gross. I'm practicing on this black paper. You don't have to practice on the black paper at all. You can just watch this part. I'm going to do the actual drawing on this green paper. It'll still work. It's just a darker paper. So the 2 sheets of black paper, one would be for day 1 in class. The other would be for day 2 in class. For now, you've got one, and if it starts going sideways on you or gets messy, you have the option to do another sheet. So if you want to practice some spheres on one of your black sheets, that's not a bad idea. All right, so it carries along, and actually, you know what? There's kind of a light shape. It's almost like right here. I see there's like a shadow that starts over here and the light in the background, but it's real subtle. So I actually do get a good back edge here. And again, really lightly to about there. And then I get this light shape that arcs around this way, back around that way. And there's a little hook right there. Let's see, this goes up. There's a little hook right there. Then kind of this is like the front of that tabletop. And I'm going to pretend that tabletop is, well, it's in light, but it's kind of a darker version of the light because that's not facing the light source like the top of the table. It's kind of turned sideways. You can see what happens with my hand. The top is all light from the light source. When I turn it, it gets darker. All right, so here's my light shapes, and I'm going to just fill in, and this is where I'm going to be extra careful. Just going to this is literally just the weight of the pencil on the paper. I don't want to max out my light too soon. And this is one of the biggest things I see when people are doing this drawing is they push and it gets way too light, way too soon. So I'm going to be building this up so I can be real gentle with it. And I'll come back to it as needed. I do see some glow down here underneath. Oops, I just scratched the page. Here's an option. Just to show you what this can do. If I'm just real gentle with it, it disappears, but it's trying to make things a little gummy. All right, with the sphere, I'm not being super careful. I'm just being kind of, I don't know, lazy is a bad word. I'm not being overly concerned about proportions and stuff in this one. I'll get much more concerned about them when I'm working with the figure. Just going to keep these all going the same direction. Right now, everything's just getting like a one pass of value, just like a single. It's like that light, the shadow shapes drawing that we did. Everything just gets, if it's catching light in the image, then it gets a pass with the pencil. All right, and I'm just going to keep this going the same direction because it's comfortable. All right, so pretty quickly I'm starting to see this sphere in light showing up. I'm going to ease that just a little bit. So this might be the first thing that I get to in the figure drawing, is drawing the shapes of light and filling them in with one passive value. And when I say value, I mean light and dark. So here the passive value happens to be light. When we did the shadow shapes, the value pass was dark. All right, now I'm going to go within. All the shapes are kind of the same right now. There's a little bit of lighter stuff on the edges where I had that line, but I want to go in and start differentiating within the shapes. And I think I'm going to start here. In this shape, it's quite obvious that it's lighter. It's definitely lighter than this background area. So I can comfortably take this kind of light that I have here and just spread that around. And you'll notice I'm not going full tilt just yet. This is the lumpiest sphere ever drawn. Let's smooth that up. Right, in this pass, I'm going to come around and I'm chasing away any of these, like where there's black paper showing through. I want this to be a very even application of value. So you might go in a little elliptical pattern. You might do like a one direction and then shift slightly and go the other direction. That's what I tend to like doing. So like this. And because I'm keeping my pencil, so here I've got a reasonable amount of the page covered. Because I'm keeping my pencil at a low angle, you can see that it's still sharp. I can carry on like this for quite a while. If I was holding it like this, doing this work, this thing would blunt off and I'd be making some pretty gross marks pretty quickly. So right now it's still kind of hazy everywhere. That will resolve as I go because I still have a lot of white that I can bring to bear here. I'm going to sharpen up this edge. So I'm asking myself questions right now. Where are my hard edges and where are my soft edges? I know this edge of the sphere is going to be a hard edge. And I know this back here is going to be a soft edge. So I'm going to steer clear of this edge for the most part, and I'm going to focus my attention up on this other edge. Max is asking if this video will be available later. Yes, it will. And you can double check me on that. Let me know if it's not, but it's going to be in the live stream section of the YouTube channel. So you can come back and revisit it as well. And if it turns out, we've got about 20 people in here. If it turns out that people just would rather just watch it later on their own time, I get it. I do like the live stream because here we are chatting. I can kind of chat with you. Just mind the due dates. Oh, one thing I wanted to make sure you do is when you turn your drawings into me on Canvas, make sure that you post them also in the discussion area so that people can see them and comment on them. I know the due date for that is later, but if you wait to post the drawing, then no one's going to be able to make commentary on it until the due date. So I'm still not quite sure what the best solution there is. All right, and then to me, this image looks like the background and the tabletop are about the same value, and the tabletop may look even a little bit darker than the sphere. What I'm going to do is make the tabletop lighter than the background, just so we get some good differentiation here. So I'm just going to make a little tabletop here. And I'm in my basement, so if you hear my heater kicking on, it's because it's in the room right next to me. If you hear my kids fighting, that's what they do when we're on lockdown. All right, so I think I'm going to leave that background how it is and just sort of make this table pop out a little bit more. I'm not anywhere near done with that sphere either. And I think I'll sort of like move a little quicker and hastier so we can get on to the actual figure. But this gives you an idea of what this buildup looks like. I'm going to focus a little bit more attention here. And I'm looking for these little, it doesn't seem like much, but these little black dots, if you can use the sharpness of your pencil and a sort of varied direction, you can chase those away and it will make your transition way, way smoother. All right, so anyway, and then I still have plenty of room here to say, throw in that highlight. I still haven't maxed my pencil out there. I could still go darker than that. But because I haven't overplayed my hand everywhere else, I get the room to put that highlight in. All right, and then here's that eraser. You can see this eraser. And this one's relatively clean, so it's not being quite as gross as they can get. You'll see it if you go way too heavy with the charcoal and then try to rescue yourself with a really heavy use of the eraser. It'll be kind of a gummy mess. But here I am sort of chasing that light shape back away, so you can do little adjustments with it. It will work. And you'll notice there's nothing up in this shadow still. going to make a little light halo down off the back of this just to make that back silhouette pop nicely. Lighten up the table a little bit more. All right, so that gives us sort of the idea of the approach. It started with those light shapes, then started filling them in carefully as I went. So feel free to practice that. You don't need the reference. If you don't, if you know the light and shadow, you can do one of these with no reference whatsoever. And I think did we do that in the shadow shapes? I don't recall. We will when we move on to the step beyond this, we'll sort of draw a sphere again, sort of showing what we're up to there. So, and pretty quickly you get this. This has a sense of atmosphere to it that the white paper just doesn't have. And so you'll notice that in these drawings, they'll take on a really nice atmosphere that's hard to get with the white paper. We're just so used to seeing it and it doesn't behave quite like the black paper. Empty black paper just feels like deep space. Empty white paper seems like an empty paper. All right. I'm going to do I'm getting messages in my email real quick, so I'm going to take a short break. It's going to be like a 2-minute break. Let me send a message real quick to someone. All right. Cool. All right, let me switch get rid of the sphere, turn on this reference image, and then all right, so this is that image that you've got. Should be, when you click into the assignment, this should be something that you see, along with some instructions on how to take a picture of your drawing. Make sure and follow those instructions, please. If I get drawings back and they're really there's a ton of shadows, the person took them on their dinner table and there's like a really harsh shadow cast over them, or in their bedroom or something, it's really tough for me to see and grade them well. So do you a favor, take them outside in the shade. Just follow those directions. If they're outside during the day in the shade, with most phones and cameras, you'll get a good picture and you won't have these harsh shadows cast all over it as well. All right, let's kick off. So with this picture, man, where to start? Well, I'm not going to start up here. Up in the head area, that's just going to be rough. It's going to be hard. So I'm going to pick a shape that's easy, or at least easier for me. And that's going to be this big shoulder, chest kind of shape. So let's see. All right, what I need to do is I need to leave room. So I'm planning out where I'm going to be. I'm going to leave room here for that head. That big shape happens down below, and then down further are the other shapes. So let's say right about here for that shape. All right, so I'm going to start basic first. I'm going to start really basic first, and already I feel like my angle is a little too steep. If I look at the image, it's a little bit, the overall angle is a little bit more like this. And I need to get something so I can start making some decisions. So I'm going to ignore the little hook. There's a little hook of shadow that comes down. I'm just going to draw past it, but very, very lightly. Ooh, that's more horizontal than that. It's more like that. Then like this. And this, let's see, down, cuts down and out. There's like a little divot right there where that trapezius meets the acromion, which we have not covered yet. That's on an angle like this to the bottom of that light shape, so I feel like I'm good. This one jets out and down, over and up, and this, if I go from this point, this is one of the alignments I'm going to make. If I go from this point, and it's because of the anatomy that I know, if I go from this point, which is part of a bone, that's the clavicle, if I start at this point and go at an angle like this, I get the other end of that clavicle. That's what's making that little bump right there. And so I expect the other bump to occur right in a line, sort of down from that, and it does. There's like a jut back in like that with this little tiny hook of light like that. And that's probably even a little fatter. I might dress that up later. All right. Avitha, no, you're not doing this drawing on gray paper. You'll do your drawing like this on black paper. I'm just using, this is the forest green paper. I couldn't find my black paper because my studio is a mess. But for, yeah, so for you, it's going to be on the black paper. You could do this approach on gray paper. Anything that the white pencil will make a mark on will work. It just won't have as much pop. Like mine will be a lot more subtle on this green paper. And it's kind of darker than it looks, but on the screen, but your black paper will have even more pop. But if you have a darker gray, it will work. All right, so there's a shape. All right, so I'm looking at this shape. Boom, boom. Might have gotten a little carried away with that angle, but I think we're good. Here, out to there. This bumps out and down. This is that shoulder area. And then it comes in like this. And then just down from this thing, that bump. If I come straight down here, there's like the other side of that shape. And then I have this nice long, that kind of shape. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and measure some things just to see where I'm at, because I've got kind of an idea of where I'm at, but I want to make sure, like, have I made this too wide and this too thin? Like, how am I doing overall? So I'm going to take a few measurements. One, the angle of that. That's not bad. Angle of this, a little steeper, good. The distance, so I'm going to go distance from this shadow here, and I think I'm just going to go down to the side like this, and I'm going to grab that distance and see what else it's like. In the drawing, it's like, oh, it's almost the same as, it's a little bit bigger than this to this. So I'm going to check that in the image. Up there, it's kind of a reasonable amount bigger. I feel like this maybe, I'm just going to favor the downward side of that. If I take an angle from this dark, so this sort of flat spot on that shadow shape and go, see, to that, yeah, I'm going to go to this point here. It's like, this is a little bit in, so I'm going to, got a little more line there than I want. All right. You'll notice I'm not drawing the figure here. I'm not gesturing, and that's probably the biggest jarring difference with this drawing than all of them is we are not going to gesture. Instead, we are just going to go for it with the shapes. And so if yours get a little, if you're measuring carefully, you should be able to keep it pretty well in check. If not, it can get out of control on you. It's like that to that. What's this? Hold on. Okay. This one comes straight for a second, and then juts out really kind of quickly, and it's almost in a line with this dark shadow here. If I just go through the arm, it sort of picks me up on this light shape, which then goes down. Let's see, first and foremost, it is, that's probably a little too, that's not bad. All right, and then over here, juts forward, down in a nice long, that's a nice straight line, so I'm gonna use that. That cuts, if I go from here, down like that, up like this, and in, right about where this general arc stops. If I scoot over, that's where this arc starts to cut back like that and goes straight down, out a tad and down. All right, I can make some choices, some decisions about this shape right now, one of which is the angle of this. If anything, I think I've got it a little too vertical. I'm going to favor that backwards lean. Incidentally, and by the way, this is going to look like a mess while you're doing it right now. It's going to get kind of like, oh my goodness, do I trust what I'm doing here? Trust yourself. Trust yourself the best you can. I don't like that hook because when I look at the image, it's a lot smaller than that. So I'm going to pop that off down. It's more like that. All right, over here I've got, let's see this. It almost looks like shadow going all the way underneath. And here's where I have to imagine. It's like if I were to try and cast a shadow onto him, would I see that shadow here in between his chest muscles? I think I would just see a little hook of it there. Like I think this joins this, but it's really quite dark, but it's still in the light. So that's the decision I'm going to make. All right, let's go over here. I'm going to come back up before I get too distracted and do this little cut in. So it's this shape. Like that. And I'm just going to pop that out. All right, if I go from this point down, I get on the tail of this little, I don't know, it's almost like a spoon. Like that. That's the shape that the shadow is making. If I go just to the right of the spoon, I'm going to say that's in the light. So I'm going to jump further over to here. This cuts in, so I'm going to erase that. This cuts in. down, and its zigzag, the bottom of its zag is underneath. So if I carry the spoon straight up, that's where that first shelf is, then it drops. Second shelf like this, down like that. And I'm not set in stone here. These things are subject to change. Down like that. Kind of a long one in like this. This should be happening just down from that angle, and it is, so I'm happy about that. Little cut back in. Pretty soon, I mean, after a little bit, you'll start to be like, man alive, this is starting to become unmanageable, or it feels like I'm getting lost, like I don't know where exactly I'm at. It's at that point you can probably start filling light shapes in. I'm going to work with it for a little while, because if I start filling light shapes in, it's harder to move them or change them, or at least I'm less likely to do so. So I'm going to kind of, I don't know, draw the shapes first, so that, and just try to be as careful as I can about measuring them. All right, so spoon, this goes, if I follow this dark shape, it goes boom, step down, step, and there's another shape that starts right here. And here, technically, I'm drawing the shadow shape, but it's just it's an island within the light shape, and it's vertical straight down from my little spoon shape that I made. And then just in from that is another dark shape with a little hook up in the end. All right, it's at this point I want to be careful, because I'm drawing these shapes down here and I haven't referred up here yet. And so one thing I want to do is I want to look at this, sort of where I've put the dip of this light shape, and I want to compare it to the hook of this darker shape I just made. The hook of this shape to the dip of that shape. There's my angle that makes. So I'm going to look at the reference and see, is that the angle? And I'm going to try my level best not to lie to myself about what I'm seeing. And even with trying my level best, I'm still going to go, you know what, that's acceptable. That's within tolerable, it's within a tolerable range. So, all right, so that's this shape. Just down from that shape, there's this, there's another dark island. If I go straight back, it should be where that bump is. The top of that, the top of this is in line with the top of the bump, so I think I didn't go far enough there. And it's kind of this squarish shape. Let me do something real quick. All right. Hopefully that'll let me know if that, well, I can see the preview. Hopefully that put the captions up at the top so we can deal with this down here. All right, so I've got, all right. Let me know if there's, I have a live button blocking the captions. Just let me know if that's happening, so I'm gonna make sure that the captions are showing up properly. All right, so, and down, make sure this, the angle, so I've got this light shape coming in, and it's got this sort of snake tongue looking thing going on. I'm gonna make sure that's the proper angle down from this shape. You'll often hear me doing that, talking like that when I'm drawing. It's like a snake tongue or a spoon or something. I'm trying to be informed by what I know is there while also trying not to get distracted by it. So this cuts down like that. Then there's another one that comes. It's almost, let's see, the angle is like this. This is probably like watching paint dry. I apologize. Listening to me mumble to myself as I draw. Let's see, that's got a bit of a sword edge. And a bit more of an angle, I would say. All right, this is in light. All right, and then this comes up, and there's actually another shape just like this. I'm treating that back, the shape of that arm and the shape of this chest, sort of the same right now. All right, so from this hook, if I go straight across from the hook, there's another little bump that comes down, in and up, in like this. Let's see, it's got a straight edge there, straightens off like that, and down. I should be meeting up with this shape, so this cuts down, across, and straight. From up here, I've got angle like this. I can already see, so this little junction here should be, if I look at the reference, it's like straight on the line between this and this. So this little thing I think is too far this way. So I'm just going to carefully pop it back up and move it over ever so slightly. This cuts straight, has a little hook down, out and up like that. From this we have, it's almost a straight shelf, but it pops up, it pops back up just a tad right there. And straight down. Cuts in ever so slightly and starts back out. This hugs this like that. In, and there's like it's like a blob that hangs down right there for that shape. All right, now I'm going to check. At this point, I'm going to take a break from drawing for a second just to look some more and make sure that I'm in a relatively good spot. So I'm going to go from this point to that point And I'm just going to see if I can find something else that's that size. So let's see what else we've got. It should be, so from here to here is that size. So if I go like this should be the same. I'm a little bit wide in the down here, but it's not, it's acceptable, I'll say. I'm going to look at the space between here, and I think maybe I'll do it up here. I'm going to look at this space and just see what else is that size. It's just about this, so there. So this is pretty close to my, I've got a disagreement here, so let me just double check that again. Boom. If I measure it again, it's like this, so I'm going to split the difference and say that. So I've got quite a disagreement here, so something's happening through here. Like this arm is too close to here, or this is going too far that way. I need to resolve that real quick. So I'm going to check verticals. If I go vertical from this point straight up, does it run through that point, sort of like in from that and that part of the slope of that shoulder? And if I put a vertical straight through, it kind of does. Like I trust where this is compared to that. I'm going to measure this just to see the length. So like from this flat spot to that flat spot, and I'm going to see what else. So that width, I'm going to see what else is this size. That's about my width. That's about this. So this. So now I've got a real disagreement. This should be how big this intervening gap is. So I think I've got this in the wrong place. Let's see. If I go, I'm going to check an angle maybe from here to there and just see. It's like that. Yeah, I've got this too crammed in. Let's see where the error lies then. Is it the length of this? If I take that length, it is, oh, sorry about that. Junk call, shush. I've been getting nonstop junk calls lately. It's very aggravating. All right, so from that point, it's about the same as right here. So my size here isn't bad. What about the peak there? If I go straight down. This is where y'all see it and you're like, dude, it's your this. And I'm just like still putting around trying to figure it out. See the axis there. I think this is, I'm going to measure that real quick. That is, okay, it's like this. Yeah, I've made this arm too big. So I'm going to, too thick even it seems. So I'm going to check this shadow. And remember the silhouette carries on back here. So when I start filling this in with light, it won't seem so emaciated like it does now. All right. Will someone ring out in the chat real quick? Just make sure you can still hear me because we've gone quiet over there. I just want to make sure I haven't stalled out. My preview seems to be okay. All right, all the way across is the same as all the way up. I'm going to rack this, scoot back so I can take this measurement. Across. Yeah, so that's okay. I think it's just, all right. Thanks, Avitha, and patience. Still not super confident with how these live streams work, so I'm half expecting them to cut out at any second. So I'm going to angle this back a little more, and then it cuts back in like this and down. Out and up. It's a nice thing to try and get yourself comfortable with, is trying not to just draw the figure, because it's a real, that can be a really daunting task. if you can just imagine the shapes, like this doesn't feel like an arm to me. It doesn't feel like an arm to me yet. But I trust that it will at some point. So this straight down. All right, I'm going to call that good for that spot. I'm going to come up here. There's my daughter yelling. She's cooped up in the house. All right, if I go straight up, and here I'm going to move this again. There we go. Right, if I go straight up with this up to here, I'm just going to make a mark, just a little tick. There's a distance there. I just want to check. I'm starting on this ear, and I just want to check that distance and see how far it needs to be. It's closer than it seems. It's like this. All right, that's pretty good. This part of the ear is weird. It's like two fingers that kind of, I don't know. I'm thinking about it as two strange fingers. One of them comes out like this and disappears and has a little hit, and one of them curls up like that. That's probably too much right there. I'm going to check the overall distance there, and it is about the same. So the height of the whole ear is about the same as the distance between. So that's where my top shape should be. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that in. And it's just an arc. Just a little arc like that. If I come in from that arc, I get this. And this is where it's going to get tricky. Where is light and where is shadow? So I'm just going to do the best I can. This little bulge out happens straight across from that bottom lobe of the ear, so that's good. Ears down and straight. If I go up here, cuts down. That happens just underneath the slant, so I think I'm still good. You can get lost here, really delving into the shapes. Particularly if you're like, oh, it's a face. Oh, I got to deal with a face. Not me, I refuse. Just going to draw these light shapes. So it cuts down for a little ways and back up. If I go straight down from this little cluster, leads straight down to the, yeah, that's pretty close. This is where I really can't afford to see eyes and head and stuff. I'm just looking at the shape. And then I'll make sense of this here in a bit. And actually looking at the stream, I got about 30 minutes. So that is down, straight in. So we've got I'm going to start filling this in just to keep myself in check. This has gotten too high. Should be like that. straight down. This is interesting. Strange little jut there. Just a light shape across. Right, I get the feeling these are kind of stretched out. I'll measure them in a second, but before we get too much further, I want to make sure and start filling in some of these light shapes. So really carefully, this is where you can undo a lot of your hard work. If you come through here with too heavy of a hand, now that I have the shapes drawn, I can just sort of go into production mode, fill them in, contemplate my social distancing. Put on a podcast. I don't like listening to podcasts really. I tend to focus on what they're talking about too much, and it interferes with my decision making when I'm drawing. But if I'm doing something like this, where I know I'm just filling in shapes, I want to say mindlessly, but it's not mindless. I'll put on a podcast or something. I can just to help you zone out, pass some time. The trick here is to not get hasty. All right, so it's going to be really tempting for me to just kind of like scrub real fast. You're like, I can't be filling in shapes all day. And I'm like, maybe not all day, but you could spend an hour. You could spend a little bit of time filling these shapes in. And I'm going to, right now, I already know I'm not going to have enough time to finish the entire thing in its entirety. So I'm just going to have these shapes drop off a little bit as they come down. So rather than, this is not, well, I mean, I was going to say this is not lazy filling in of shapes. It's just understanding I'm not going to really take those shapes much further. I'm going to focus my effort kind of up here just to have some resolution to it. I want to ask myself where are people going to be looking, or where do I want people to look? And that's the place that I will finish off most satisfyingly, I guess is one way to think of it. With the face this close to the top of the page, I might be able to get away with just doing a real basic version of that and focus our attention down in here, or maybe like this part of the ribs is kind of a really interesting area. Or I might want to finish off the face, depending on where you want people to look. If for you beginning folks, I would not focus too much on the face. It can eat up a lot of your time. as well as being relatively distracting and difficult. All right, so this is my first pass of light. So this is just describing to me those things that are receiving some light from the light source. It doesn't have to be much. If it reads as something that's even catching a little bit of light, it gets this first pass. And again, I do this kind of straight. I'm way off the back of my pencil, just using the weight of the pencil, and I do this straight hatch, and then I turn slightly and do another pass. It helps kind of even things out. If it makes more sense for you, you can kind of do little circular motions, whatever seems most comfortable and natural to you. However you can lay the most even value down, because this is where haste really kills you, because you spent time doing all of these delicate shapes only to come through and just obliterate them all with a really hasty white pencil value fill in. Don't do that. And again, down here, I'm just going to let these, I'm still going to fill them in down here. I'm just going to kind of let them fall by the wayside, so to speak, or just take a back seat. That's probably a better way of putting it. And I'll just do a real, this back arm's not super important. And that goes for any limbs that are kind of in the back. They're not super important, so I'm not going to devote much attention or devote much of my time to that necessarily either. And it's going to kind of rhyme with this other arm that's just kind of, dropping off as it goes downwards. All right. Clean that just a tad. All right, and I'm going to check some of these shapes real quick. If I take the height of the ear, height of the ear. Yeah, this is way too skinny. Yeah, all of that stuff needs to be a lot wider. So this is a good example as any, I guess. If I go straight down from here, it hooks right on this hook. So this stuff. Here's that eraser again. Just don't want to be too heavy-handed with it, but just getting this white charcoal. I've got to move these shapes. I didn't want to make the face too wide, and as I was worried about that, I ended up making it way too slim. All right, so this cuts out a little farther. I'm going to help myself along up here by filling these shapes in as I make them. If I have to move them, yeah, so be it. See, this is a little too narrow, I think. Goes in, down, up, in. Too close here. So now I'm starting, if you watch the lecture, especially in this face, I'm going to start deciding where things are lighter and where they're less light. And if you didn't watch the lecture video, you really ought to, because that's where I explain a lot of what we're looking at in here, what we're focusing on, why we do the things we do, and so on. Aviva wants to know if there's a way you could do a really light pencil gesture, or is not gesturing part of the assignment. I have two answers to that, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot with them, I think. But my first answer to that is, that just seems a little too skinny. That's what's happening. Is that not gesturing is kind of part of the assignment. Challenge yourself and see, can you trust yourself to make the right shapes? Right. Where I shoot myself in the foot is going to be that if you do a good job of it, there's going to be no way for me to tell. Right? Like, if you do a really light gesture, clean up after yourself, cover your tracks, it's going to look to me like you did everything, like you didn't start with a gesture. So I would encourage you not to start with a gesture, just so that you can get this practice of trusting the shapes and making the shapes and shifting the shapes if you need, as opposed to maybe building on what you've already done in a way that makes you less likely to change things. So that's the idea. And if we were in class, maybe this will be a good enough answer. If we were in class, I would direct you to not do a gesture and to really just trust yourself. I need to be a little more careful with this shape, so you go straight down to that. I'm scooting that head back again. Let's see, once I fill these in. Oh, my captions. Let's see once I fill these in. Fill these in. Those captions are brutal. Right, and I could spend a lot of time in this face trying to make sure everything was perfectly where it was supposed to be, but that will start to distract. Feel free, if you're so inclined, right, that needs to come forward just a tad. Just don't let it distract you from more important stuff. All right, so now I'm going to start differentiating in the light a little bit, even though this face kind of isn't exactly where I would want it to be if I were going for it. It's got that little dimple thing there that's interesting. This will at least give us an idea. So now I'm just deciding where is it lighter, where is it less light. Really careful as I build this value up more. I think I got a little too carried away right there. And particularly, where is the edge hard and where is it soft? We have a hard edge here, so I'm going to clean that up as I lighten it. Maybe just sharpen that edge a tad. Hard edge there with a light surface. It's kind of light through there. Kind of light through here, kind of in this snaking S. Mainly down here though. Okay. There's a few little dark spots through here. And then we get a light spot there. And really a concentration of light up through here. More light. It's dark-ish through here. It's not, I mean, it's lighter than I've got it, I think. But if I were to ask myself the difference between this and this is quite obviously a lot lighter. So let's just go ahead and lighten this area up. Trying to do it as evenly as I can, so it's like I'll do a pass like this, and then I come down like this and then go back up like that at a slightly different angle. If I feel like it's not filling in the paper decently enough, I'll go at a more extreme angle just to try and fill the texture of that paper with charcoal, white charcoal, without going too heavy. I'm trying to leave my options open as I go forward. So this doesn't look anything like that model, but you get we're getting a start at least. As far as looks in the face go. One thing I notice about this back area is it's not as light. Like this is not as light as this. So I'm going to go ahead and let this stay with this pass that I'm putting on right now. We get this. It's like a little bit of light there. So I've been drawing here for a good while. Here's where I'm going to separate these. So there's a little bit of white charcoal in there, but I'm going to stop it. Right there, I'm going to have a little island of just slightly lighter stuff there, or slightly darker stuff rather. You can see how many times I've sharpened my pencil. It's still sharp enough to do this work. Because of the way I'm holding it. Right? If I were holding it and out of the way, as I said, it would be quite dull at the moment. All right, there's a light little triangle of light here. It's kind of light back there. There's a light hit right here. This eases the bottom edge of this light shape. It's a hard edge, so here's an instance. Really hard edge there and all the way down that side, but it drops off very subtly down into this bigger shape. Even it grows just a little bit this way, I think. Lighter there, and maybe through here. Definitely lighter right there. And a little hook right there of light. And again, I said I'm going to let this arm drop off, so I do see quite a bit more light and shadow happening down here, or at least variations within the light. I'm just going to simplify them and kind of leave it at that. I don't want us to be fixating there necessarily. All right, these shapes, all of these stair-step shapes, they're kind of like light on top, and then they ease downwards. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that. I've got a hard edge here, light on top, and then eases down. Light on top, and then eases down. Out here, I've got light through this region. Maybe a little bridge going up there. Eases down. This is that oblique muscle that we talked about before. So light there. It almost looks like a bear paw, like 1, 2, 3 going through there. So I don't know, it's a bear paw. And then it's a little bit lighter right there too. Maybe just a tad right there. All right, it's definitely lighter through here. And eases down. Because the light source is up above, I'm pretty confident that if I'm dealing with a dark shape, most of my light shapes are light along the top, and then they ease down. There's a little bit of light. Joins in with that. Little pop of light right there. Little pop of light right there. Move this. I guess I should enunciate more clearly. It's a pop of light. All right. There's that navel area, and I can see this light. It's like where the navel is, the light is striking that belly button from above. It's still pretty rough through here. Like that's kind of dark through there. So I think what I'm going to do is just chill that out a little bit, just to help bring that more to the surface. Maybe the same through here. I don't want them to seem too craggy, I guess is the word I'm going to use. All right, so there's a light shape like this. And all of this is in the light, but this is like how the lighter area goes. It's like that. And then just behind the spoon and up. This area also has light and then drop off. It's kind of a darkish, it gets kind of dark-ish through there, but that's probably a little too dark. Definitely light right there. Definitely light right there. You can see what looked really light before, like really light in value, that first pass I put down. It fades into unimportance as I put these lighter things in. So we are doing tones of light. Yes, if I understand you properly, we're doing the shapes that the light is making. And then within those shapes, we're asking ourselves, where is it light and where is it less light? And what is the edge like? So for most of the shapes, the light shapes I've been doing, it's been like light drop off, light drop off, light drop off, light drop off. Some of those shapes have soft edges, like here where things are turning into the shadow. Some of them have much harder edges, like up here. Like I'm probably even going to come back and clarify that edge even better because that's a shadow being cast from up above. That whole area is kind of in light. All right, now I've got some cleanup to do too, because as I look at this, it seems a little bit, I don't know, like a little bit harsh as I go through. So I'm going to, especially like right through here, I think I could do a better job of fleshing these shapes out. And it's at this point that I would spend some time, and I'm not going to have time to do it here in the live stream, but I would spend some time chasing down the little black dots that I see, making sure that I get a nice even coverage. And little black dots, but in my case, they're little forest green dots. That shouldn't be so dark. And this is going to get a little more light to bring it forward. A little more light there and here. Definitely going to bridge this. And add some more light there and up here. And I'm going to add some. Now I'm bearing down with my pencil just a little bit more. Still being careful. Add some more shape up here. And maybe when I say chase down black spots, like dark spots, let me show you what I mean by that. Avitha asks a question, do I recommend keep the line work or blur it with a tissue? I would keep the line work. I would make sure that line work is so light from the start that you don't have to do a ton of blurring after the fact. Like some of the lines that I put down were so light that they've all but disappeared. Some are still showing up, especially, in these unfinished areas. But I would aim to have the lines so light that they just disappear. The blurring, like if I come in here with a tissue or blending stump or something, the blurring can start to get pretty aggressive and kind of gross looking, to be honest. It's better to try and get there with a pencil. And if I look at the paper texture, I'm going to just try and pull this in tighter. Well, I'll just pull this up. If I get this pencil in, like I can see a little dot there. If I just chase that away and like here, like any textural dots that seem like they're overbearing, I can just chase them away with my pencil. Right? Any of them that seem like they're getting too much attention as a dark spot. A sharp pencil will do this, a dull pencil will not. So my pencil is actually starting to lose its tip because I started pressing a little harder. So if I reloaded with a sharp pencil, I could do a much more effective job at chasing those little spots away. And if I can't chase it away, rather than press harder to try and fill it in, I'm just going to change direction. Like which direction am I pressing, or which direction am I swiping the pencil? All right, it is past time, y'all. I'm going to send out an announcement in Canvas for a Zoom session. If anybody wants to join after this, we can get together on Zoom. And I'll answer any questions. It's going to be kind of like an office hours or something. I'll answer any questions you might have. And just sort of go from there. All right. So good luck with your drawing. Draw along with me. Rewatch this if you need. Maybe someday I'll finish this. Maybe someday not. Who knows? Especially that. Got to deal with that face. All right. I will see you all later. And Monday and Tuesday of next week, that's when we're going to do our live streams. All right. 10 a.m.